the development lead for the OCCRP's Aleph platform. Now, this presentation is based on an article written by Aparna Surender. Aparna was a data science fellow at the OCCRP, and she did a huge amount of research and a lot of the implementation work when producing this feature. So I wanted to start by saying thank you to Aparna, and also to say that if you have any questions or if you'd like to know any more, then please feel free to reach out. I may not be able to answer your questions immediately, but I will do my best to find the answers that you need and give you the information that you require. A little bit of background. The OCCRP, the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, exists to expose crime and corruption so that the public can hold power to account. In order to achieve this, we've created Aleph, a platform that helps journalists and activists find, organise and collaborate on their investigations. Our stories are very data intensive, and as a result, Aleph contains thousands of data sets in a huge array of languages from a large number of different countries. Central to the work that our journalists do is the idea that they should follow the money as it flows between companies, between people, between assets. And Aleph was built to help those journalists achieve this by connecting disparate data sets together and enabling them to make connections and derive insights from over 20 terabytes of information. To achieve this, we use Elasticsearch. It's a search tool that I'm fairly certain some of you will have heard of, and it does a great job of finding words and phrases in very large amounts of data. But we found that it struggled when it came to searching for names. The problem that we identified was that as people were referenced or moved between countries or across borders, it was very common for their names to change to match the jurisdiction. For example, Alexander, Alexander. In an English-speaking country, might be pronounced the same, but spelled using a different character set in somewhere like Russia. It might be concatenated in somewhere like Australia. It may be pronounced similarly, but not quite the same in somewhere like Brazil. And I'm not sure what's going on with Greece, but it looks very complicated, and I really don't understand it. The point is that one name can have very many variations depending on where it's being used, in which language it's being used in, and which character set it's being used to be written. We needed to find a way of connecting all of these names so that when our journalists were looking for something, if they were searching for someone like Alexander, it would also search all of the different variants of that name so that they could be sure that they were finding all of the right and most relevant information that they required. Problem was, we didn't really have a list of all of the names and all of the synonyms for all of the names that we required. And this is where Wikidata has come in really, really useful. Allow me to introduce Alexander von Saschen, the 16th century Elector of Saxony. Now, not many Aleph users are going to be seeking information about Alexander von Saschen, but Wikipedia's data for his name has helped us to connect Ukrainian-born businessman Alexander von Rott with documents that render his name in Ukrainian. Alexander. There was a further complication here, though, and that is that Wikidata stores most of its names as single strings. The raw data for Alexander von Saschen appears as a single block, Alexander von Saschen, or Alexandre de Saxy. We needed a system that grouped all those possible variations of Alexander, recognizing them as the same name across languages, without including Saschen or Saxa. So how did we do this? Well, we started by downloading a full copy of Wikidata. Now, as you'll know, all no doubt be aware, in Wikidata, the articles from every language version of Wikipedia link together to form entities reflecting the subject of each article. Each entity has its name's data in every language. It has been entered by Wikipedia contributors. So we used that data, I think, to extract 29 million names, roughly 5.8 million unique words from the article titles that have been linked to approximately 2.3 million entities about people. And then we made an assumption. And our assumption was that synonyms sound similar. So we converted all of those 5 million name parts to phonetic symbols based on their approximate pronunciation. And I think we used a Python library, Metaphone, to achieve that. Once we'd encoded all of those phonetic names using Wikidata, we started to group similar sounding names together using a Levenstein distance metric. What that meant was that in our example, we were able to extract Alexander, Alexandra, Alessandro, and Alexander into one neat group, and then Sashin and Saxa into another. And that was fantastic. But there were advantages and disadvantages to this phonetic approach. On the one side, it improved our ability to be able to navigate non-standardized name data, like entries for the same person that included different titles or suffixes. And it also allowed us to avoid overly relying on rules about the structure of names that might not necessarily hold up very well when we move across countries or across cultures, or even within them. The trade-off was that it also discarded some of the synonyms that don't phonetically match. William and Bill, for example, or Richard and Dick. Internally, we're still debating whether using the phonetics matching setup makes the most sense, or whether a comparison of recurring names across wiki pages might get us closer to having all the synonyms listed. But anyway, once we had our groupings, we ran a simple calculation to try and identify co-occurring name pairs, names assigned to the same wiki entry. And from this, we created a master list of synonyms. From that initial 29 million article titles, we ended up with roughly 20,000 pairs of names. To reduce the risk of false positives, we also removed matches that didn't co-occur in at least 20 different entities. For example, Abdullah and Abdullah, very similar names. And they're identified as a probable pair of synonyms in our data set. But Wikidata doesn't have 20 Abdullahs who are also labeled as Abdullah. So to be conservative, we pruned Abdullah and Abdullah from our final list of synonym pairs. But Alandro and Alessandro with 37 matches made the cut. Using this threshold allowed us to trim the list of name pairs down to about 1,800, producing a data set with a high precision, which meant very few false positives, but on the downside had pretty low recall, which meant more false negatives. The upshot was that there are plenty of name pairs that would qualify as synonyms, but unfortunately have not yet been identified as such within our data set. Plus side, we rarely identify names as being the same when they are not. One of the other reasons that we kept that threshold of 20 quite high for finding true pairs was to avoid drowning our users in irrelevant search results by creating an over-eager synonym match. And that's what we did. And what would we like to do next? Well, we'd certainly like to include more nicknames. Our synonyms include a few common nicknames, but we want to add more and expand beyond those phonetically similar nicknames to include variants such as Sasha, a common nickname for Alexander in Slavic countries, or the aforementioned Dick for Richard. We'd also like some better prioritization. We hope to incorporate probabilistic methods to try and identify good synonyms and rank them over less likely alternatives, but we'll have to see how we go with that. And we probably want to take a look at our threshold parameter. We need to learn more about how widely synonyms should be defined and maybe help that to influence where we stick our threshold parameter. Thank you very much. If you'd like to learn more, our website is aleph.occrp.org. We have docs. There's an email address if you'd like to contact us and discuss this further, or if you'd like to take a look at the code, we have a GitHub repository. It's all there for you. Thank you very much.